Hey guys, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Ankush here from Alif Consulting. Welcome in our Azure Data Factory video. In this video, we will be going to talk about Azure Data Factory and the basic functionalities. Well, here is the agenda of this video. So we will be going to have a basic overview of Azure Data Factory, and then we will be going to talk about how Azure Data Factory works, then why data factory, what are the main concept is there, how the Azure Data Factory flow look like, how the data migrations can be happen, and at the end we will be going to have a little demo on how we can basically create a data factory and how we can manage it through a data factory studio. So let's quickly jump to the overview. So Azure Data Factory is a cloud integration system which allow moving the data between on-premise and cloud systems, as well as scheduling and orchestrating the complex data flow. Azure Data Factory is a more of a extract and load and transform and load platform rather than a traditional ELTs, which is also known as a extract, transform and load platform. To achieve ELT goals, you need to have a following approach. First, ADF have a built-in feature to configure relatively simply simple data flow to transfer the data between system and data system location on both an on-premise location, and it support all the major database services like SQL servers, Azure databases, Oracle, MySQL, and the other file storages and the big data as well, like the local file system blob and Azure data lake, right? Alternately, you can also use ADF, right, Azure Data Factory, to initiate SSIS packages. That could be a handy if you need to implement more data movements and the transformations, right? So that's something you can do also. It's not like it just need to be like use need to be moved for data and kind of thing, but you can also use it with the with SSIS, which is a SQL reporting package as well. As for transformation tasks, ADFS can provide or provision the different Azure services on the fly and trigger script hosted by a different database and the other data process systems like Azure Data Lake, Pig, Hive, Hadoop, and Azure Machine Learning's APIs. So this is how the flow looks like. So it's a code-free ELT as a service. Like we can have our ingest where we can specify from where data need to be ingested, where the data need to be collected. Those are can be from any of the services, from even from the GCP or even from the AWS like S3 bucket. Then we have the control flow where we can design code-free data pipelines, generate the pipelines via SDKs, and utilize the flow constructions like loops, branches, conditional executions, variables, and the parameter. And then we have a data flow where exactly we do a scale out with the Azure integration runtime, generate the data flow via SDKs designed for data engineering and data analysis, right? And then we have a scheduler which basically build and maintain operation schedules for your data pipelines, wall clock, event based, tumbling windows, and chains. So that's how you can do a scheduling. And at the end, then you have a monitor where you can view active executions and the pipeline history, detail activity and the data flow executions, established alerts and the notification. So this is how ADFS is there, and all of these services are there which can help you to use the ELT as a service from from Azure Data Factory. Now why data factory, right? It's a very important thing. So while you can use SSIS to achieve the most of data integration goals for on-premise data and moving the data to from cloud, uh, present as a following challenges is, right? Job scheduling and orchestration, which is one of the problem with the SQL server, right? So SQL server services, which is the most popular to trigger the data integration task, is not available on the cloud, although there are a few other alternatives like SQL agent services on a VM, Azure schedulers and Azure automation for data moving tasks, job scheduling features include in the Azure Data Factory seems to be best. Second, security. Azure Data Factory automatically encrypt data in transit between on-premise and the cloud sources, so it's provided the security. Scalabilities. ADF is designed to handle the big data volume thanks to its built-in compatibilities or the mechanism for supporting the scalability. It can help you to move many gigabytes of data from on-premise to cloud or cloud to on-premise within the few hours. Continuously integration and delivery, which is also known as a CI/CD. Azure Data Factory integration with GitHub allows you to develop, build, and automatically deploy into the Azure. An entire data factory configurations could be downloaded as a AM template and used to redeploy Azure Data Factory in the other environment as well. So that's the one of the thing where CI/CD can be happen. And for those who have a skilled with PowerShell, Azure Data Factory allows you to create and deploy all of its component using the PowerShell. Last, which is a very important, minimum or minimal code required. ADF's configuration is based on JSON file, and the new interface face coming with Azure Data Factory V2 allows you to create the components directly from portal without much coding. That's why that's the reason, one of the reason why I also love the Microsoft technologies. So in this one, right, with the data factory specifically, I would like to focus on the last feature, which is the minimum code requirement. We do have a dedicated Azure Data Factory portal from where, which it's also known as a Data Factory Studio, from where we can use that portal, or we can use the GUI, like the graphic UI, right, to create our all the workflow within the Azure Data Factory. We don't need to run the commands, we don't need to create the codes to build that, right? So all of these are the reasons why you need to use the Data Factory. The main concept, right, this is a very important, is to understand what are the main components are there within the Azure Data Factory, right? So the first thing is which we have is connector and link services. The link services contain the configuration file to certain data source. This may include the server and the database name, file name, credentials, etc. Depends on the nature of job. The second one is the data set. The data set also contain the data configurations, source configuration setting, but more on a regular on a granular level. Dataset can contain a table name or a file name or structure or etc, right? The third one which is there is the activities. Activity represent the actions that could be data movement, transformations, control flow actions, right? Activity configurations contain the setting like database queries, store procedure names, parameters, script locations, so on. Activity can take 0 or more input data sets and produce one and more output data set. The fourth one which we have is a pipeline. So pipelines are a logical grouping of the activities. A data factory can have a one or more pipelines, and each pipeline would contain a one and more activities. The next we have is the triggers. So trigger represent the scheduling configuration for the pipeline, and they contain the configuration settings like a start or end date, execution frequency, etc. Triggers are not mandatory part of Azure Data Factory implementation. They are required only if you need the pipeline to be executed automatically on a predefined schedule. The last which we have is the integration runtime. Integration runtime is a very important component for Azure Data Factory. The integration runtime is the compute infrastructure used by Azure Data Factory to provide the data movement compute capabilities across the different network environment. The main type runtimes we have in the Azure Data Factories are: first is Azure IR. Azure integrated integration runtime provide a fully managed serverless compute in Azure, and it is It is the service behind the data movement activity in the cloud. The second one, which we have as self hosted IR, this service manages the copy activities between a cloud data store and a data store in a private network, as well as a transformation activities like SD inside Peak, Hive, and Spark. The third one, which we have, is Azure SSIS-IR. SSIS-IR is required to natively execute SSIS packages. So these are the some of the concepts which is there into the ADFS, and all of these components have their own works, and they are very important of in terms of when you are creating your or using the Azure Data Factory. This is how your data flows looks like. So you do have a pipelines where you need to define what kind of scheduling, monitoring, or management, or what kind of task you want to do. And then there is the activity, there is a data set basically, and then there is a link services where you linked your services, like what kind of services you want to use for these activities, right? So this is how your overall Azure Data Factory flow work. Data migration, which is a very important part of Azure Data Factory, because that's where Azure Data Factory can help us to migrate the data to the newer cloud services, or to the past platform as a services. The main straightforward approach to begin the data transfer is to use a data copy winger. It's let you easily build a data pipeline that transfer the data from a supported source data store to a supported destination data store. In addition to using the data copy option, you may customize your activity by manually constructing the each of major component. Data factory entities are in the JSON format, so you may build these files in your favorite editors and then copy them into the Azure portal, so that input and output data set and the pipelines can be created in the JSON for migrating the data. So this is how you can basically have your data migration with the Azure Data Factory. Well, let's move to the demo. So in the demo, I would be going to show you how exactly you can create the data factory, and then how your data factory studio looks like, right? So in my case, I already have created a one Azure Data Factory, right? That is already there on the Azure portal. So I will be going to use that as a data factory, but to create a new one, what you need to do, you just need to click on create, and you just need to find for data factory in the marketplace. And from here you can create your data factory. You just need to click on create, and you need to select for the data factory, and then you need to provide a certain informations like what is the resource group is going to be, what is the name, what is the reason, what is the version is going to be. By default it's only have a v2, but earlier there was a v1. Microsoft have discontinued the v1, and we only have an option to create the v2 for data factory. We do have a git integration which we can directly do. We do have a network options where we can integrate this Azure Data Factory within the private network also. We do have a data factory encryptions which we can enable by using the customer managed key, and then we just need to review the configuration, and from here we can create the data factory. Once your data factory is created, this is how it's going to be look like. So you don't have a much option on the Azure portal once your data factory is created. So you can see you do have the networking, you do have manage identities, you do have some of the properties, but apart of that there is no other options are available in this in the Azure portal to manage or configure the data factory. Now how exactly you can do that? So for that, Microsoft have a different portal which is also known as a Azure Data Factory Studio. You just need to click on this one, and as soon as you click on this one, it's going to be open a new portal, and the URL for that portal is adf.azure.com, and here it's going to open a Azure Data Factory Studio where we can design our pipelines, where we can design or done our transformations, where we can design or run our schedules, we can do the monitoring kind of thing, right? So if you see, this is how my data factory look like. So it's already going me on my own data factory which I have created. So from here I can do the monitoring. like any pipelines has been run, any triggers has been run, any integration runtime is there, all of those can be seen. Any data flow debugging has been run, any notifications, any alerts or any metrics, all of those can be seen here, right? And then we do have a manage options where we can link the services, we can integrate the runtimes, we can integrate the Microsoft preview. So in case of if you really want to link any server, so you just need to click on link server, and here you will see there are plenty of services available across the multiple providers, not from the Microsoft, from but from other as well, like SAP is there, SAP HANA is there, REST API is there, you do have a PostgreSQL, you do have a PayPal, you do have IBM, you do have a Google Cloud, which is the Google Cloud Storage, or you do have a big query, you do have a options for dynamic CRM, you do have a AdWord options, you do have a S3 bucket also if you really want to integrate that with this Azure Data Factory. So let's take an example. If I really want to do with this Azure storage, so I can go ahead and select this one, and a part of that we do have other compute options also which we really want to integrate, like if really want to have a Synapse analytics to be integrated, machine learning to be integrated, Databricks, Azure batch functions, right? All of these services can be integrated as a compute to this data factory. Now I am just trying to do with the Azure storage account, so I just need to define the name of the link services. I need to define, or I need to say for the subscription in which I want to have a link services, and then I need to define the storage account. So in my case I don't have any storage account created, but it will be going to allow you. You just need to select it and you need to click on create. As soon as you've done it, it will be going to have the link services here. Same way you can have your integration runtime configured. So in my case, either you can have a Azure or self-hosted, or either you can have a Azure SSIS for lift and shift existing SSI packages to the Azure, right? And then from here you can define, create your data pipelines, you can create your data set, you can create your data flows, and you can create your power queries. So that's is a pretty much easy by having this Azure Data Factory Studio. So you just need to click on plus, and from here you can see what exactly you want to do. Either you want to create your own pipeline, or you want to use from the template gallery. We do have a plenty of templates galleries are available, right? So if you really want to copy the data from on-premise SQL Server to Synapse, you can use this template to configure that, and you can check your Synapse data set, whatever the Synapse services is going to be there, or the database is going to be there, and then you can see what is your data set is going to be in that database. So that's how you can basically use the templates to create the pipelines. Also same way you can have your data set created. So if you really want to create a new data set, you can see what kind of data set you want to create, and you can use that to configure into the Azure Data Factory. And same way you can basically done for flow, same way you can done for query as well. Well, that's it in this demo. I hope you like this video. If you like, please click on like and subscribe for more upcoming videos, and feel free to reach us if you have any questions. Thank you.